Were your parents cool with you being friends with the opposite sex growing up?
Not at all. I was not allowed to talk to boys.
At all?
At all.
Now you're really all awkward around them?
Never. And I'm just like, what? And then now they're like, get married. And I'm just like, excuse you?
You're like, I spent all these years of not even talking to guys and being awkward around them, and now you expect me to get married?
Yeah, exactly. I was not allowed to be friends with them, let alone date.
Yeah.
And when I was in school.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is what it is, I guess.
So tell me a little bit about when you started making guy friends, because obviously that happens, right?
Yeah, of
we're
course.
In a school setting. It's not like
you're
we're in an all-girls school.
You're gonna have friends that
Yeah.
are guys, obviously.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even anything. I stayed friends with the guys that I met in school or wherever I met them. But I used to like not tell my parents that like
Yeah.
I'm hanging out with guys.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I would just tell them, oh yeah, I'm just with the girls.
Right,
like,
right.
But the guys would be there too. Like it would
Exactly.
be both of us.
Right,
it would
right.
be a group of us.
Exactly.
But if I mentioned like there are guys there, they would think, oh well, like why do you mean there's guys there?
Yeah.
Like where?
Yeah.
Why? Who? What? And
I think
all these questions
Yeah.
will come rolling in.
I just remember them saying to me, a girl and a guy can never be friends, so stay away.
Yeah.
And then I thought that for the longest time.
Yeah.
And I actually have had some awesome guy friends, but and they're like my brothers, and there was no tension or anything like that. So it's just like weird when you grow up like having this belief system.
Yeah.
Then you think like, oh, that is true, which I understand to a certain extent too, because if one person finds the other attractive, then that kind of messes up your friendship as well.
It does.
So it's just I understand their mindset, but at the same time it's like, no, we can't like stay away from boys throughout our lives and all of a sudden they can't expect us to like find a partner to marry.
Yeah. I think that's like something that they didn't understand while we were growing up too,
Right.
because they never had that
Exactly.
growing up. Like back
Yeah.
home they weren't.
They
you know.
weren't friends with the opposite
Yeah,
sex.
no, never.
So it's just like that's what they know.
Exactly.
So can't even blame them.
But times have changed.
Yeah.
You know.
Welcome to the Love Atlas. Today I have Shivani Bharadwaj. She is my cousin. I'm honored to have Shivani here with us today. And this is her second podcast with me. For the first one, we talked all about gaming and just like her passions. It was just so much fun. So I decided to have her back. We'll be discussing what it's like to be an American Indian. I moved here at the age of 7, and Shivani moved here at the age of
Almost 2 years old.
almost 2 years old. Wow.
So-
Yeah, and we both speak fluent Hindi. We're so immersed into our Indian culture, but at the same time, growing up in America, it's like, are battling that as well, like being Indian and American. So challenges, a lot of challenges that we've come across. So we really connect on that. So we were like, oh, why don't we create a podcast and talk about it? Because a lot of people will connect and relate. So yeah, I have Shivani here with me again. And Shivani, tell us a little bit about your background, moving to the United States of America.
So basically, my journey started off in India.
Yeah.
And I was born there. It was just me and my mom, and we both moved here when I was about 2 years old. My dad was already here. He was already settled down here.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
yeah. And then, yeah, I don't really remember it because I was so young. I was just
Yeah.
a baby. So
Yeah.
that part of my life I don't remember, but that was the start of my journey here in America.
Yeah, and I know you speak fluent Hindi as well, which is incredible because I moved at the age of 7.
Yeah.
So how was that for you? Like, did your parents really want you to like speak Hindi?
I think mostly that was thanks to my grandparents, actually,
Oh,
because
okay.
they stayed with us too. They moved out here a little bit after me.
Okay.
So they lived with us
Yeah.
basically my whole life. You
Wow.
know, they also had a hand in raising us.
Right.
So they obviously only spoke Hindi. So communicating them in Hindi was like a huge thing.
Yeah, and that's
And,
so great because you get to pass that on to your kids in the future as well.
Yeah, one day.
When did you realize that you were balancing, growing up?
Yeah.
As you mentioned, you are in America, but then your parents wanted you to be very Indian.
Yeah.
And same with my parents as well. So how was that? How was balancing that?
I didn't realize it until probably when I was sometime in elementary school, probably. When I started to notice that I was different than like the other kids in my class. Their parents would, let's say, approve their kids like sleeping over or like having like birthday parties, you know, pizza parties and all of that. That was the first time I noticed that things were different for me.
Right.
And I think balancing it was tough at first because I didn't understand it so much. And I would always kind of think, oh, my parents are just doing this just to be, you know, they're just strict and they just don't. But really, they didn't understand it, I think, you know?
And I think for them, it was that fear of letting go and immersing themselves into this new culture.
Right.
Because I connect with you on that. I didn't have any sleepovers growing up. Actually, I had friends sleeping over. That was allowed, but I couldn't
go
over
to them. That was similar to me too. There's like, they can come here, but you can't go anywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. And then birthday parties and stuff, like as long as they're during the daytime and parents are present, that's fine. But anytime I was invited to a nighttime event, they would be like, my dad would say, why can't they have a party during the day?
Yeah. It's just like, it's not like, what?
Exactly.
No, I agree. It was different for sure.
And you feel left out because if every child is going to a slumber party, it's so funny because now I still want to have slumber parties because I never had slumber parties growing up. So now I'm like, oh, I want to have friends over. And I'm telling everyone, hey, sleep over. Where does that stem from? That stems from because I didn't have it. I didn't have that freedom when I was a kid.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it becomes kind of healing for your inner child, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what we're essentially trying to do now. Because I'm the same way. I'm just like, I'm going to go have a slumber party with my friends because I never had it as a kid.
Exactly. So tell me a little bit about how did you feel as a different person when it comes to being in school and then being at home? Because we kind of live two different lives.
Right, like a double life. I feel like in a way, I feel like my school life or like my life that I had with my friends, I feel like they saw a different side of me. They saw me as more myself.
Okay.
I was able to be more myself with them.
Yeah.
At home, I didn't really have a lot of freedom to really express even like an emotion. Like if I'm mad, I can't express that I'm mad. It's just like frustrating.
You just keep everything bottled up. Honestly, and then it comes out eventually.
Eventually it does. And so you kind of try to have to learn like regulating your emotions, you know. I don't know. It just becomes like a tug of war almost because you have like a personality at home and then a personality outside of your home. Right. And my parents don't know anything about like my life outside of the house, and then my friends kind of have an idea of like how I live at home, but like not so much.
This just reminds me, it's so funny because this reminds me of being in high school. My dad wouldn't allow me to wear these like huge like hoop earrings that I loved so much because I was all about like the J-Lo life. Yeah. And I remember just waking up in the morning, the first thing I would do is like keep those hoop earrings in my pocket. Yep. And then I would go to school and I would just put them on, and that's how I was able to express myself versus, and then as soon as dad or mom came to pick me up, the first thing I would do is like take off those hoop earrings. Because I would get in trouble. They would be like, oh, why are you wearing these hoop earrings? Right. Like, why are you straightening your hair? Yeah. Why do you have chapstick on? Why do you have this
just like these small little things. And that actually reminds me of a story too from when I was in high school. Yeah. My parents didn't like it when I would wear like skirts or shorts. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like I would have to stash my shorts in my bag, go to school in the morning, go straight to the bathroom and change into my shorts, and then come out of the bathroom and then just like in shorts all day in school, and then my parents would come pick me up from school, and then I'm back in my pants that they dropped me off in, and it was just like a whole thing.
I think a lot of girls can relate to this.
Yeah.
Indian culture, different cultures. Like I think, like honestly, I did the same exact thing. I wasn't allowed to wear spaghetti straps, so it's like,
exactly.
I have to like carry it in my backpack and then switch in the morning. And the thing is, like you're trying to really not only express yourself, you're trying to blend in with the other kids.
Yeah.
Because everyone else around you is wearing this spaghetti strap, so you're like, hey, why am I not allowed to?
Yeah.
So I also want to be able to express myself and dress a certain way. And when you go home and tell your parents, they're like, no, this is not allowed.
It's absolutely forbidden to them. Like, it's just like, don't even bring it up ever again. And it's just...
And when you're so restricted, if you really think about it, then you're lying and you're still doing what you're supposed to do. Because you're like, oh, this is how I'm supposed to be at home, but then, hey, I still want to wear this, so you know what? I'm going to hide it. And it's not just me, it's anyone who's restricted, I'm sure, can connect to this.
Yes. Anyone who has maybe immigrant families.
Yeah, absolutely. Not just Indian background, but various backgrounds, where you grew up like being very restricted.
Yeah.
So I know we were talking about this earlier. When I was in 5th grade, my dad opted me out. Like he didn't sign the waiver of where I can watch that sex ed video where you're learning about puberty and all of that. Do you remember that? How did your parents sign off, or were you that kid who was outside while everyone else was
watching it? That was me too. I was not allowed to watch that video, which when you think about it, it's just it wasn't even that serious, because it's like you're learning about your body.
Exactly.
Right? But they were so against, I think that goes back to like the cultural differences, because obviously back home in India, they don't teach them about this kind of stuff.
Especially in 5th grade. They teach, I think, like
in 5th grade.
I think like 11th, 12th grade. I mean, nowadays it's probably different.
I think now it's different because I'm pretty sure it's different now actually, because they've progressed so much.
For sure.
And, but at the time, I don't think they were familiar with that concept, so they thought this was so inappropriate for us to learn, and my parents were just like, absolutely not.
My dad looked at it and he was like, nope, and then he signed off, like, it's okay, she's not watching it. And I remember being the only kid, I think there was another Chinese girl in my classroom, so her and I sat outside. Yeah. And we were just like, hey, what are they doing in there? Like, what are they watching? Because we feel left out. And then I remember everyone coming out of the classroom with a little bag, and they had all these deodorant and stuff. Deodorant, like a pad and things like that. Yeah. And I'm like, hey, I didn't get that. Like, what is that? I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, it's crazy. For me, I remember I was the only one.
Aww.
And I think they took the boys to the auditorium, and then they showed the boys their video. And then they took the girls, so I had to be like watched, like some teacher had to like watch me while everyone
it was like an hour long, and I was just sitting outside during like the entire process, and I was just like, why did my dad like sign the waiver, and why did he opt out? Because I want to be in there, I want to be like in the classroom setting watching that video and not feel left out.
I felt left out. I was stuck in a room full of boys while the girls were gone.
They were like,
they were like, why didn't you go? And I'm just like, I don't know.
Exactly. It's so interesting because I felt left out during prom as well. I don't know if you had the opportunity to go. I did not.
I had to fight for that.
I still remember my parents saying, my dad was like, you can go, but I'll be standing outside.
Oh no.
And like, you'll have 2 hours. Like standing outside as in like my mom and him will hang out and do their thing. But I was just like, no, I'm not dressing up. Like, and spending all this time and money and then showing up only for an hour. So I was like, I'm not even gonna go. And I still hold that against him sometimes, but it's so funny. They've come such a long way too now. And he's like, I don't know why I didn't let you go. It's not.
Yeah, right? And now they don't even know why they said no.
Yeah, I think it's just at that moment they were trying to protect.
Yes.
It was like,
they keep you in this shell almost.
Exactly.
For me with prom, it was, I had to fight for it. And thinking back to it now, it kind of wasn't even worth going, to be honest. So I don't think you missed out on a lot.
That's what I heard from a lot of people.
Yeah, it was really not that serious. But I wasn't allowed to go on the party bus that my friends were on. I had to get dropped off and picked up by my parents.
Oh, wow.
So that was the only difference.
I mean, what's the fun then?
Exactly, right? I basically missed out on the on the fun stuff, and then it was boring prom,
Right.
and then I
So
was
it's like,
home.
what's the point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they even had like an after party or something, and of course I wasn't allowed to go to that. So
Yeah.
I heard stories about it later on, and I was like, oh, that sounds like so much fun.
Were your parents cool with you being friends with the opposite sex growing up?
Not at all. I was not allowed to talk to boys
At all?
at all.
Now you're really all awkward around them?
Never. And I'm just like, what? And then now they're like, get married. And I'm just like, excuse you?
You're like, I spent all these years like not even talking to guys and being awkward around them, and now you expect me to get married?
Yeah, exactly. I was not allowed to be friends with them, let alone date.
Yeah.
And when I was in school.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is what it is, I guess.
So tell me a little bit about when you started making guy friends, because obviously that happens. Right?
Yeah, of
we're
course.
in a school setting. It's not
Yeah,
like
you're
we're in
gonna
an
have-
all-girls school.
You're gonna have friends that
Yeah.
are guys, obviously.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even anything. I stayed friends with the guys
Mm-hmm.
that I met in school or wherever I met them. But I used to like not tell my parents that like
Yeah.
I'm hanging out with guys.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah.
I would just tell them, oh yeah, I'm just with the girls.
Right,
like,
right.
But the guys would be there too. Like it would
Exactly.
be both of us.
Right,
It would
right.
be a group of us.
Exactly.
But if I mentioned like there are guys there, they would think, oh well, like why do you mean there's guys there?
Yeah.
Like where we
Yeah.
why who what and
I think
all
right-
these questions
Yeah.
will come rolling in.
I just remember them saying to me, a girl and a guy can never be friends, so stay away.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that for the longest time.
Yeah.
And I actually have had some awesome guy friends,
Mm-hmm.
but and they're like my brothers, and there was
Yeah.
no tension or anything like that. So it's just like weird when you grow up like having this belief system.
Yeah.
Then you think like, oh, that is true, which I understand to a certain extent too, because if one person finds the other attractive, then that kind of messes up your friendship as well.
It does,
So it's
yeah.
just I understand their mindset, but at the same time it's like, no, we can't like stay away from boys throughout our lives, and all of a sudden they can't expect us to like find a partner to marry.
Yeah. I think that's like something that they didn't understand while we were growing up too,
Right.
because they never had that
Exactly,
growing up. Like back
yeah.
home they weren't.
They
you know.
weren't friends with the opposite
Yeah,
sex.
no, never.
So it's just like that's what they know.
Exactly.
So can't even blame them.
But times have changed.
Yeah.
You know.
I really
Yeah.
want to know, were you ever embarrassed of being Indian?
Yeah, when I was younger.
I've heard that from so many like friends growing
Yeah.
up.
It was, I think, because of, not really having like a sense of belonging anywhere. Like, am I Indian? Am I American?
Right,
You know,
right.
where do I fit in?
Yeah.
Where am I in this spectrum? I guess basically.
Yeah.
So growing up, I remember in school I would kind of be ashamed of taking Indian food for my lunch, and my mom would just pack me Indian food, and then kids would just be like, "What's that smell?"
Yeah.
It would make me feel so uncomfortable
yeah.
that I was like, "Mom, never give me Indian food ever again, please.
Yeah.
It's not good." But she obviously didn't understand why. She was like, "What's so wrong about this? What's the big deal?"
Yeah. I remember my mom would just say, "Oh, just tell them it's a burrito. Like I'll just pack like roti and like put potatoes inside it, and just it'll be like a little wrap."
Yeah.
So I would kind of like take it in this foil and like this napkin that she would wrap in, and I would like eat it like really like hiding and eating it.
Oh my god.
And honestly, it's so weird though, because it changed so much after like elementary, middle school, because then I stopped caring, especially when it comes. I think in high school everyone wanted my mom's cooking, like my mom's food.
That's
so all my
good.
friends would be like, "Oh my god, did you bring your mom's dish? Like, can I have some?" So my mom would
Yeah.
pack several like burrito rotis.
Good. Yeah, I like
So,
that.
But I think I was so embarrassed. Second grade, I think second and third grade, I was just like. I would try to hide it because of the strong smell, and if one kid makes a negative comment, then you hold that.
Yeah, and then you just never want to do that ever again.
Exactly.
I would just like break off pieces and just like
Quickly.
quickly eat it, so nobody would
Yeah.
notice.
It's
But
crazy.
I mean, obviously now I don't care as much because I actually embrace our culture.
Yeah.
I embrace like who I am, and I'm
Right.
proud of it.
Exactly.
But growing up, it was definitely way different.
Yeah. Do you feel more connected to Indians at the moment, or do you feel more connected to your non-Indian friends?
So as you know, I have one best friend who is
Yeah.
Indian, and
Yeah.
I'm the closest to her.
Right.
She's, we've been friends for several years.
Yeah.
And I never really had Indian friends growing up. I kind of like steered away. As I said before, it was kind of just like, I guess I was kind of trying to deflect
Right.
and
Yeah.
kind of trying to
Stay away.
stay away,
Yeah.
trying to become more American in
Yeah.
a way.
Yeah.
So that's why I never really had Indian friends. And in fact, like, even as an adult, like I currently only have that one friend, and the rest of my friends are, from different backgrounds.
Yeah.
Like, they're Persian,
Yeah.
Middle Eastern, or like,
That's so interesting because I feel like it's the same exact thing with me. I have a very like selective, maybe one or two Indian friends, but majority are all from different cultures. I just feel like I've always connected with non-Indians a bit more because every Indian person I've come across, or at least like my throughout the years, the Indian people that I have attracted in my life have always been like very competitive and kind of like where they try to one up one another, and
Yeah.
that's just not my vibe. I just feel more connected to people who are more uplifting,
Yeah.
and unfortunately that just hasn't been from my own community.
Yeah.
I just haven't come across uplifting Indian people.
yeah.
And I hope that I do down the
Yeah.
road, but it's just been hard. And it's interesting because I met someone the other day, and he's basically a kind of like a priest, and he mentioned to me, and we were talking a little bit about the Indian culture, and he said the reason why a lot of Indians here can be cunning and all of that is because they grow up trying to always compete. Whether it's
Yeah.
education, and moving to America is not easy, so it's like
Yeah.
you're really trying your best and you work really hard,
Yeah.
and with that comes a lot of baggage. So
Right.
you're just like, oh, whenever you come across another Indian person, it's like, oh, I'm better than you, or
Right.
I want to like, what are you doing with your life, what's your
Yeah.
occupation? And it's just, I feel like that kind of environment has just never intrigued me in any way. To me, I'm just like, okay, you get to know a person holistically rather
Yeah.
than just like labels.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
And I noticed with like other cultures too, and people from other backgrounds, I noticed that instead of one-upping one another, they're so good at uplifting their
Yeah.
own people.
Yeah.
Like if someone
Yeah.
needs something, they're
Yeah.
like, here you go. Like, this is what you do. You do this, this, and this. Like, here, go. Like, you got this. They're very supportive,
Yeah.
and that's how I feel like that's like the community that they have.
because I think we grow up like, oh, don't tell this person this thing.
Yeah.
Or don't, like, there's always so
It's
many
just-
restrictions, so you think like, oh,
Yeah.
if something good is happening, I shouldn't help another person.
Yeah.
Which is wrong because
It's kind of like gatekeeping in a way.
yeah. And I've come across, Persian friends where they help one another.
Yeah.
And they really try to, if like, let's say one of my other friends is looking for a job, my friend will put in so much effort to help her.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I feel like that's kind of missing within our community. And I hope that it improves over time. I think there are great people versus, and also bad people in each community, but unfortunately I just have felt that
Yeah,
quite often.
Same.
Yeah.
From what I've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the things you hear too.
Do you think it's just American Indians though, or do you think like people from India, like who live in India, are also like that?
That's interesting. I think so. I just went to India last year.
Yeah.
Last June, I was there. And I noticed that there is a level of closeness there between their own, like in the community that they have, than we have here.
I agree with that. That's what I noticed as well.
Yeah.
I also went last year, and I just feel
Yeah.
like sometimes I connect with Indians who are more Indian, like from India, versus like American Indians out here. So it's kind of like, wonder why. Is it because I'm also very Indian deep down inside? Like, what's the reasoning behind
Yeah.
that? But I think there's that competition with American Indians especially.
Right, because that, again, the one-upping.
One-upping.
Yeah. That's like part of, it's like innate for
It's
some
innate.
reason.
Yeah,
like it's
yeah.
like in us for some reason. I don't know.
It is. And I'm not a huge fan of it because that's something that I personally don't agree with. And it doesn't
Yeah.
sit well with me because I just feel like you should be kind, and you don't have to like. It's not always about competition.
Yeah, it's never that serious.
Exactly.
You know, it's really never that serious.
Yeah,
Like you need to relax.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
calm down.
Exactly. 100%. Did you ever feel like you were judged for being not Indian enough?
There have been times where I've been called like a whitewashed Indian, and
Yeah.
I'm just like, how?
Coconut.
Yes. And I don't understand. I mean, I don't know what they mean by it. I don't know if it's because of the way I talk or
Yeah.
if it's just because
A, B, C, D.
Yeah, like I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been told I have a Valley girl accent,
Yeah.
so they were like, "Oh yeah, you're a Valley girl, like you're a whitewash Indian."
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, well, if
That's the case.
that's the case, then maybe.
But then you start speaking in Hindi and they're like, oh, wow.
Yeah, and half the time, like, they don't even know the language, and
Yeah.
I'm just like, you don't even speak it yourself,
Yeah.
so why are you here judging me? Like,
That's a good point. Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
but I mean, people just, I don't know, people like talking.
Yeah, because I've been called a fob so many times, and it's because I love Bollywood music.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, okay, like I'm a
But see,
fob.
I like Bollywood music too, but like, it's not, I mean, how does that make you foggy?
And I'm fine with it. I'm like, yeah, I'm fresh off the boat. Like, it never affected me because I'm like, I just grew up like thinking like, okay, I love my culture. I love being Indian. I love the music
Yeah.
and their traditions behind it. So it never bothered me so much.
Yeah.
But so I just laughed it off. But I can see
Yeah.
how some people can get offended by that.
I can see that too, yeah.
Do you feel like, would you say that traditional Indian expectations affect your self-esteem and confidence level, especially growing up in a strict household?
Definitely. I think it made me kind of limit myself in a lot of ways. I feel like I didn't really believe in myself as much as I wanted to because I always felt like I was doing something wrong all the time.
Same. Oh my goodness. I can
Yeah.
cry about that.
Honestly,
Yeah. I'm like, oh, everything is bad. Oh,
everything is wrong. Like everything I'm doing is wrong. I can't make a decision. I can't do this. I can't do that.
Yeah.
And it leads into your adulthood too later
Yeah.
on, and it becomes a problem because now you're just this indecisive person, and I'm like, why can't I just make this simple decision? Why
Yeah.
can't I just make this? It's such a simple question or a simple problem, and I can't
solve it.
solve.
Because we're so dependent on our families. Because for me, at least, I was always seeking for approval.
Yeah,
like, oh, Dad, what do you think
exactly.
about this? And it would be like, no.
Yeah,
So I'm
exactly.
like,
And it's
oh,
like-
everything is wrong. Damn.
Everything is wrong. I can't do anything, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
but it does have an effect
Yeah.
on you. And then you have to unlearn that, and then you have to kind of like take a step back and just be like, okay, well,
Right.
I'm not this person. I
Right.
have to kind of just take decisions
Right.
as I go.
Being able to make your own decisions, like, and I think it's such a, as you mentioned, unlearning what we've been
Yeah.
taught. And obviously there's great qualities that our parents have ingrained in us as well, but at the same
Yeah.
time there are certain things where it's like, you know, they come from that old school mentality, so we
Yeah.
have to be able to separate that and know that, okay, I'm not wrong for making this decision. This is the decision that I want to make for myself, and I won't let that guilt affect me because deep down inside this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree.
So I think it's being able to separate that, and it's the toughest thing because you grew up constantly seeking approval from your family because you want to be, the number one thing we all want is growing up, we want to be accepted by our family.
Yeah.
We want to be accepted by our mom, dad,
course.
and our
Yeah.
caregiver. So for me, I was always seeking that approval. Like, what do you think about this? Whether it came to school or ideas, but then being shut down so many times, then you're like, oh shoot, I'm doing everything wrong, and that confidence level drops.
Yeah.
And your self-esteem is so low that later on you're working on that pretty much like in your 30s.
Yes, I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
It's really hard to kind of build that confidence back up, especially when you've like suppressed yourself for so
Right.
long.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you don't even know who you are at
Right.
some point. You know,
Yeah.
your identity is just like completely washed. Like it
Exactly.
nothing makes sense.
Nothing makes sense. I can relate with you because growing up, I did the same exact thing. I felt a belonging with my friends.
Yes.
And when I came home, I had to be this good girl. Whereas when I left home, it's like I get to like really immerse myself into like being my true authentic self and just, you know, enjoy myself with my friends and talk about whatever I want and be able to not feel guilty, not feel like I'm doing something wrong, because there was always that question that I remember my dad would ask me, is like, oh, are you a good girl? But it's like, I am a good girl. Like, what? And then even with that, I'm like, oh my goodness, am I a good girl? Like, what is it? What is the definition of being a good girl?
Yeah, that is, exactly.
It's just like everything messes with your mind, and you're like, oh shoot, like this is damn. Like, what do I do with my life? Like, it really messed with me.
I get it. It's tough.
It's tough. But
It's tough for sure. It's hard. I don't know. I don't blame them either, though, because I feel like they just didn't know. They just didn't know any better.
Yeah, they didn't. But I think the biggest advice I can give as a teacher to parents listening, you can honestly just being positive and really starting with your child at a young age, like being able to really support them matters so much. And the positive affirmations and really cheering them on, they will take that into their adulthood and will remember that forever, rather than always rejecting their thought process or whatever they might be, you know, any creative ideas they might have. Don't reject it. Really talk to them about it, and in a happy way, to make that child feel so good about the decisions they're making, because that will allow them to really shine later on, and and also it increases their self-esteem and confidence level, and they'll be able to make those decisions later on in their life. You know, there will always be difficulty, but at the same time, they'll be able to get through it a lot more quickly.
For sure. And I also want to add one more point to that. Also, listen to them. Listen to them, please. Like that makes a huge difference. Like children, your kids, like they want to be heard. They want to be heard.
I think that's such a good point, because I think we're so wired to think like we are the teachers and we're going to teach this child.
Exactly.
And that's great, but your child also has a voice.
Yeah, exactly.
Your child also has feelings and emotions.
That's a person. That's a literal person.
Last but not the least, Shivani Meri Nani.
Yeah.
My little sister. What advice do you have for your younger self?
For my younger self, let's see. I would tell my younger self, do not be afraid of being who you are. Really embrace your true self, and don't let the outside voices that are telling you like you can't do this, you can't do that, those limiting voices, don't let them cloud your judgment. Do not let them affect you as who you are, because you know yourself to your core.
That's such a good point. I love that.
What about you? What would you tell your younger self?
So it changes. I would say at the moment, I would say to laugh more.
Laugh more. That's a good one.
And I think because we take life so seriously. When I was in high school, I was so focused on like, what's happening around me, and like the exams, and college was like, you know, finals and all of this. So it's just like, immerse yourself into the present moment and laugh more and enjoy your life. Because it changes very quickly and there's more responsibilities down the road. So it's just immerse yourself into the now and be able to keep laughing and enjoying. You know, I have a quick story before we end this conversation, but the other day I did a meditation. And it was in Santa Monica, and I was teaching a class where it was a class on improving your relationship through laughter. And I laughed for 1 hour straight.
Oh, wow.
And honestly, I know it sounds like crazy, but it was the most liberating feeling ever. And I felt so emotional towards the end of the night because it made me realize that we just forget to laugh. And laughing is the best medicine. It really decreases your cortisol level, the stress hormone, and then it increases your happy endorphins. So just being able to laugh, enjoy, and just, you know, remembering that this moment won't come back. So let me just fully authentically
Yes.
be here.
Yeah.
So I
agree.
think that's the most important because life moves very quickly.
I agree.
Yeah.
Don't sweat the small stuff.
Exactly. Yay! That was awesome.